We have a lot of things to do, and we feel that we have little time for ourselves. And back in February, I believe it was, it's something I think you do yearly, but you put out like a self-care calendar.
We do it twice a year, every February and every July, which we picked those based on data, as you know, a good scientist.
Right.
We have no relationship with anyone else like we do with ourselves. And February with Valentine's Day, I also am at Camp Lejeune. So a lot of our team members are military spouses and their partner may be gone. And that can make Valentine's Day a bummer. So between that and that relationship with self, we do them in February and then again in July because we serve pediatrics, probably 70% of our population. And that's the 1 month between the shitstorm of June and the shitstorm of September. Yes. So let's fill it up with some extra self-care through the community care initiative, which is us making it freely available to everybody else also. We do it twice a year for the last 6 years.
Yeah, that's exciting. And I love how, and we can talk more about this, about like what self-care can look like. But, over the years, I've downloaded your self-care calendar and have loved to get like new ideas, fresh ideas of, I didn't think of it that way, or, this is a good idea. But I don't know, let's talk a minute about like what self-care is. And I think at this point, I could be wrong, but I think at this point, a lot of us in the field have heard and talked about, it's not just about bubble baths and chocolate, right? That it's really looking
Cake too. Yeah, I like cake.
You like cake. Mm-hmm. So I think that's whether you're a parent or caregiver, or I don't think it matters. If you're a human, I think it can be a challenge to show up for yourself and know what that even looks like.
I'm glad to hear you say that you are feeling like a lot of people have gotten that message that self-care is not just that consumer self-care. I'm not sure. I think a lot of times it still comes up, whether it's in talks I'm doing or even in sessions as a psychologist, right? As I'm working with other adults or teens or what have you. I think the idea that self-care sometimes is uncomfortable is something that hasn't fully landed. And I think it's less about it being related to self-care and more about, as humans, a lot of folks are motivated by avoidance, right? Avoiding things that are uncomfortable. And sometimes self-care is uncomfortable, right? Scheduling your mammogram is, probably not the most comfortable thing. And at 44, it's a hell of a lot more comfortable than cancer.
Yeah.
You do it, and I mean, I'm being punchy, but sometimes when my phone rings and I see who's on the other end, self-care is hitting the red button. Frequently, it's a hard conversation, right? If I think about at work as an owner, it's having hard conversations. That is self-care. It's also community care. And I think that's important too. Self-care, since I started talking about it more, like around 2016, I think I have a complicated relationship with it maybe now. And I think it's that, I feel like it's framed as an individual failing. And I hate that actually. And I think that's wrong, because burnout is not an individual failing as much as it is a system. And that's why I came up with community care, because I like alliteration and it hits on a context that I think is missing when we're looking at equity. When there's a power differential, and many times there are, you can't, if you're a member of that minority group, the group with less power and control, let's use ethnicity for an example, there's no amount of brownies and bubble baths that's going to ameliorate the impact of racism. So when you have more power or control and you're a member of a majority group, it is your responsibility, I believe, it is my responsibility to create systems of care that protect and support those who have less power and control. That is community care, intentional action done to provide care for a group, which is not the opposite of self-care, but is rather complementary to self-care, which is that individual action aimed at providing care for self.
It's very much a system failing. And we have a lot of conversations. We have a support group, that we just started and in the beginning of the year. And, there are already a lot of people participating. And this is also where we got the CEO moms panel from, right? Because we had such great conversation, in the support group that I was like, let's bring this out. If you guys want to join me for a conversation where people can hear. But our worth is tied so closely, like individual worth is tied so closely to these things, right? Like if we are feeling, if we're not able to be as productive yesterday as we were today, or if we're finding that we need to take a break today, but we didn't have to take a break tomorrow, or anything like that, then we're failing. It's tied to our worth.
A lot of these people that we work with are, they are the change makers in their company, right? And so how I assume that there has to be some level of self-awareness to identify that my systems are broken, causing burnout or maybe mistrust, toxic behavior, right? Do you have a good way or a helpful way that people can step outside of that? Because again, you're going back to, I'm the failure because my system, right? So it's kind of this loop, you know what I mean? Yes. Does that make sense?
I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And because I think not being on the same page is where that being a shit to yourself comes from. This must be my issue. So let's look at our profession specifically. And as I've said a million times now, I super appreciate Dr. Carr's use and separation of the profession from the field or the science, because they are not the same. I am talking about the profession as in BCBAs who are generally working in insurance-funded or educationally funded programs for kids with autism. And that is a profession separate from our field. So I think there is in many ways, a lack of overtly naming and acknowledging the state of the profession. And that is a system, and context matters. So I think that is a useful thing, because for leaders specifically within our profession, I believe one of the major contributors is folks are still operating like we're in a system of 2019 when it's 2026. So I just want to kind of review that a bit. So the field has changed, and that has nothing to do with Dr. Becca Tagg. It has a significant impact on Dr. Becca, just like I'm sure it has for both of you and everybody listening. But I don't know that folks are aware of that. And the reason I'm taking the time to label this is because I see it as the parallel process of what I see in our ABA graduate students when we're teaching the science, which is missing the understanding of a case conceptualization, which includes taking context or setting events into the picture. And that's where I think our breakdown is. So there's workforce 2020 changed a ton of things. Full stop. Just period, right? Yep. So there's workforce instability since then. There's certainly tighter margins financially, business-wise, due to some change, a variety of things, but changing payer policies, legislation, increased payer and administrative burdens, also connected to those policies, higher expectations from multiple stakeholders, because we've had a big I don't know what's the right word, consolidation is the word I'm looking for. We've had a rapid consolidation within our profession of private equity backed companies making a lot of acquisitions. And whatever your feeling is about PE is what it is, and is as separate from that. That's a huge context shift. Consolidation is a major context shift. And this has led to some of the, higher expectations and different operating systems within individual organizations, which is a context and system. But we also have our bigger system context, which is the way our profession has changed. And I do think that there are a lot of leaders who are still operating like it's, the system of 2019. Oh, we just have to get back to that. No. And I did it too for years until realizing, okay, so it's been years now. It's time to this is the new normal, right? And I don't know that clinicians who are not owners, because even owners struggle with this, are recognizing the massive contextual shift that has occurred within our profession, which I believe strongly is a huge contributor to this like epidemic of burnout. It's not individual failings, nor is it individual company failings. It is a huge context shift, and we are still trying to shove our same systems through this new lens, and it's not working.